Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. Don't expect video in this one. If you got some good quality headphones, you can just sit back and buzz. So I want to just do a little bit of a hangout. You can share this as much as you want in case other people might be interested in the message, either now while I'm doing it live or afterward. Or you might not want to. I don't even know if it's going to be all that different than what you'd expect. Basically, there have been a few people who've chimed up with some opinions about recent events in the community. And I'm going to say what sensible people would say instead of people who are too terribly concerned about our side, your side, that sort of thing, the other side of the fence. So there'll be many of you who will just say, okay, well, that was profound, Hog Tie. That's kind of what I was thinking too. There may be some nuggets of information that I'll share. Where's the fire? Okay, let's put on the fireplace. There may be some nuggets of information that I might share that you didn't know, but for people, I don't follow the whole nonsense as much as some other people do. Okay, that was not me. Zoo animals in my house. Very classy. All right. Settle down. It's interesting. I was actually some time ago going to do an online discussion about morality with my kids, because we've been talking about moral choices and what it means to be moral, and I find that neither of them is able to articulate their moral rubric. Let's give it a try now. And remember, we're in English only, and we're not saying any names, right? We can call you, what do we call you, sir, or Hog Tie Junior, and you can be Miss Hog Tie or Miss. Go ahead, you try it. Can you articulate your moral rubric?
What's a rubric?
Oh, you guys are not prepared for these discussions at all.
Snap, snap, snap.
Come here. What's the found? Oh, okay, yeah, do that first. He's going to go wash his hands first, because that's what and he's going to burp on the way to the bathroom. Is he okay? Is it the beverage? What do you have for beverage choice? Today am drinking. I wonder if Dragnut. You guys, you have Crush. You have Crush in the United States, right? I'm drinking Lime Crush today. It's one of the joys about having young kids is that you buy beverages that you can buy things like Orange Crush and Lime Crush and Grape Crush, and you can drink various sodas, as the Americans call them. We call them pop, and you have an excuse because you're like, oh, my kids like it. Do you guys like root beer? Okay, how about you, Miss? Do you want to explain your moral rubric? What's the foundation for your morality?
I don't know.
You don't know what the foundation? You don't have a basis for your morality? What's the foundation?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay. Let me ask you this. We're talking about good choices and bad choices. Is it a good choice? Just put that down for a sec. Is it a good choice to make a left-hand turn on a red light?
No.
No?
Sometimes.
On a red light? I'm taking away your driver's license.
She doesn't even have a driver's license.
Never. Well, you see why. Never times. Come here. I want to ask you guys a couple other things. Come here. Are there words you're allowed to say and not allowed to say?
Yes.
What is okay, I'm going to ask you for a word. Okay. Leave off the determiner. Pa, la, none of that. Okay. Just the word. Okay. Seal. You can say that one.
Fuck.
Yeah. So that's an okay word for you to say in that context. Is it okay for you to say that, the sort of word that sounds a lot like that in English?
No.
Now, do people who say that, are they bad people who should be put in jail if they say it?
No.
Oh. Well, why do people say it?
They can't. They're crazy people.
Crazy people. What's your view, Miss?
Can't say the music.
You're talking with your mouth full. Is that a good choice or a bad choice?
You can say it when you're doing music.
You can say it when you're doing music. That's right. When you're doing rock and roll, you can drop F-bombs. That's right. So there are contexts where some adults, I think we have a rule. Do you remember the rule? Who remembers the rule? How many times per day are you allowed to use swear words? What's the rule?
The answer, like, you have to subtract your name by 10, and even if it's in a age, and even if it's in a negative number, then it still counts as 0.
and then divide by 4. Your age in years minus 10 divided by 4.
Right.
So your grandmother, for example, who was 70, 70 minus 10 is 60, divided by 4 is 15. She's allowed to swear 15 times per day. But even still, she doesn't swear in church. She doesn't swear in court. She doesn't swear at the bank. She swears in the comfort of her own home. She doesn't swear at people. Right? Have you heard grandma pull something out of the oven and go, oh shit? Yes, you have. You commented on the one day that we said that she was swearing. We're at the table at their house, and then she said that word. And then you said, oh, grandma said that S word. And then I said, I know, but she's 70. Minus 10 is 60. Divided by 4 is 15. So she's allowed to swear 15 times per day. And you said, but it's only breakfast time. She's only sworn 9 times, and she's already sworn 9 times, and it's only breakfast time. She's going to run out today. Okay, so we can talk about some moral choices what about lying about people? What about if you went to school and you told people that, I'm going to say a kid at school, I'm going to make up a name, Daryl. And you told people that Daryl starts fires and is probably going to jail because he starts fires. Is that a good thing to do or a bad thing to do?
Bad.
A terrible thing to do. Right. So you don't know how to explain your moral foundation, and yet you seem to be able to make moral decisions. I'll tell you about this one. And I'm going to mention that G-Man did this, okay? Which I know that usually sets you guys off. You think, well, then it's necessarily wrong. Remember, G-Man's not wrong about everything. G-Man does believe the earth is round, like ball-shaped. Yeah. What about calling somebody a doorknob? If you call a woman a doorknob, you say she's like a doorknob.
What does that mean?
I don't know the word in French for it. In English, you know what it is?
No.
You don't know? I don't know how to tell you what it is. The thing you turn when you open a door. Mm-hmm. You know what it is? Uh-huh. Oh, okay. So you know what it is. Okay. So he says that this woman, he says Annabelle, he says she's like a doorknob. What about that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Terrible.
Do you think it's terrible? Why is it terrible?
And insulting.
It's insulting. Oh. That. Okay, but I don't. Okay. Why do you think it's terrible? You dozed off. You kind of started staring off into space.
I wouldn't say that.
What? You wouldn't say that. You wouldn't call somebody a doorknob? Maybe it means that they're silly. Like you're like a doorknob. That might be a silly thing to say. I sometimes call you guys cuckoos, like cuckoo birds.
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, you don't get upset about that. Would you be offended? What if I said like your mom was a doorknob, or your mom's friend? You know which one I'm talking about. I said she's like a doorknob. What would you say?
Hey, that's mean.
Why is it mean?
Because I think you were referring to like the insulting.
Well, what's insulting about it?
Why would he call her a doorknob?
Sorry, what?
Why would he call her a doorknob?
Oh, okay. See, that's the missing piece here. So why would he call her a doorknob? Okay, so when G-Man says that a woman is like a doorknob, he's saying that she has a habit that there's something that she does frequently. I'm really struggling here because we talk about some pretty grown-up stuff.
Like God?
Like we do talk about that, yes. Bible stories. Okay. But this thing that G-Man says, when he says, oh, she's like a doorknob. For me to explain to you why it's offensive, I would have to tell you about some things that maybe you guys don't need to know at this point in life. Like it's that offensive. So we probably shouldn't say it, huh? All right, well, we've moved on to that. Okay, you guys got something else you can do? Are you just about done gnawing on that? What are you eating today? You got pork ribs? Hey, I got a question. Oh, that loose tooth. Oh, why would you eat pork ribs when you have a loose tooth? Isn't that?
I told you.
I know. Well, I know. Listen. Is that was that pig your cousin? No, he wasn't your cousin.
Why?
You're not. Aren't you related to pigs?
No.
You're not related to pigs. Okay, Caleb. Oh, look at that. Look what I just did. Is that pig your cousin? Not first cousin or second cousin, but
that's my sister.
No, not. I don't know why I just walked into that. That was a lighthearted joke. Okay, let's get back to the audience here. We're getting. That was an interesting point. That I do find it funny that I do find it interesting that the sort of real critical moral issues that some of these people identify is that, oh, using these bad language, using an F word or the M word in French. I don't think. Do you guys say the M word in French? No.
I didn't know the M word.
Don't talk with your mouth full. How about that? You know the M word because you've heard me say. You've heard your mom say it. I know you've heard your mom say it.
Okay.
No, we're not guessing. We're not guessing. Okay, you finish and then go wash your hands. And maybe now is a good time to stop because it looks like that's not doing any good for your teeth, for your tooth. Okay, wipe your hands and go wash your hands. And now I'm going to talk to the rest of people. Hey, folks, how you doing? Yeah, I know it's interesting that sort of the most atrocious moral things, the thing that some people, and notably G-Man, will use as the wedge between the moral and the immoral. The people who have a basis for their morality and the people who don't have a basis for morality is whether they use a particular set of words. And even my children understand that there's a difference between saying "oh poop" and "you're a poop face, I hate you." Right? They actually understand those differences. We have some people who sort of boast to own morality who don't really sort of get that. Anyway, let's get back to what's going on here recently. So, I mean, this is in part a response to the like basically there are three people, G-Man and Antonio and True Empiricism, who've each put up a video calling for a general boycott, right? They've now decided that there is something fundamentally wrong in the community. There's always been problems, but now there's been something that is so awful. Now we need to draw a line. And they're going to draw the line because somehow we don't know how to draw the line. Nobody else, right? I'm going to say they and we. Again, it's not Christians versus atheists, right? It appears to be about these three people versus everybody else. Now, amongst everybody else, there's some sort of sensible, mature thinkers, and there's some people who are trolls and people who like to love the drama and laugh at the lulls and that sort of thing. But it's a grab bag. But those three are the ones who are going to stand, and they're the ones who are going to draw the line. And what all of a sudden spurs them into thinking, well, now a line needs to be drawn. Well, that's easy. Evidently, as the story goes, atheists are trying to get G-Man fired. Specifically, and this is where I'm going to agree with them wholeheartedly, the specific behavior that they object to is people disrupting G-Man at his workplace, calling G-Man while he's at work, calling G-Man's workplace while he's not there. Very, very not cool. Calling other companies unrelated to order food that isn't paid for to be delivered to this place and say, oh, Gary ordered this. And it's just, and that's an assumption, by the way. I assume that the only way that that's funny is if you say specifically, you put the food order in this person's name, and often uses his first and last name, which I won't on my channel, but I'll respect G-Man's wish. He always says, call me G-Man or call me Gary. He kind of goes back and forth on that, but whatever. I'm going to call him either of those names here because that's what he's asked for. So this effort now we're going to draw the line. And like to me, that's a bizarre thing on their part to say, well, now we're going to draw this line, because they don't seem to realize that the line isn't drawn where they're drawing it. We've drawn this line years ago, right? The line should be pretty obvious, and that is the difference between pulling some shifty stuff on online, shifty, just goofy, clowny. Online life is very different from real life. We bust each other's chops all the time. But then it's once you take it into the real world. Now, I made a post about this on Google Plus the other day, so you'll expect some repeating of those sentiments. But just so I can just sort of summarize in brief here, there are really almost no excuses to take something that happened online or get some information you got online and to take it to an offline forum somewhere in the real world. Now, I do note there's one exception to that. If something happens online that is a criminal act and something that you think is serious enough that it requires the police to be involved, then you deal with it. Then you can decide, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to have them deal with it. If you're a victim of a crime online, absolutely you should very seriously consider calling the police and put a stop to that sort of thing. If you witness crimes online, you know, people mistreating their children, whatever, and you think that, well, this is something that I at least need to notify the authorities and need to look into it, then you notify the authorities. But notice what I'm saying is that if something non-criminal happens online, just people shit talking each other, then you don't take it to their real life. If something criminal happens online, you still don't make a big drama about it on YouTube. You just go straight to the police and let the police deal with it, right? So to me, that's where that line has been drawn for a long time. Now, I would include on the wrong side of the line is this false witness. I'm going to use the term false witness. There's a lot of other terms that can go for it, the sort of defaming statements or bad light untruths. Like, so what I'm talking about here is the concept where you're so mad at somebody, or you're intending to hurt somebody, and you're just like, I'm going to say something to make sure that that person suffers in some way, right? So, for example, if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, so and so applied for a job at our workplace, and I understand you used to work with him at this other company," and I tell the person who asked me this, I say, "Oh, yeah, you might want to pass on this guy because the reason they let him go was for stealing." Right? Like he can't help himself. He's a kleptomaniac, he's a thief, whatever, right? And that's not true, right? Or to say, hey, don't be around this kid, this guy. Don't let your kids go around him because he's a pedophile, right? Like you say something that isn't true because you're just doing it just to hurt the other. In fact, it doesn't even have to be why you're doing it, right? I mean, I just think that there's an obvious social prohibition against these bad light statements about other people. And to me, that's where the line is drawn, right? You just don't do that stuff. Now, I'll tell you what's weird, and we are going to get into some of the details here about G-Man's activity, and partly why I'm making this video today, is that when G-Man gets caught out doing this, when G-Man is caught out not just spreading some wrong information, but it's very obvious he's decided he wants to do it out of his hatred. He wants to do it to be spiteful and to hurt somebody. And it's obvious, you can see where he constructed it. So it's not something that he heard and misunderstood, but he is expressly lying and knowingly lying. And you pointed out to him, pay attention to this, fellow evangelicals. G-Man will always say, well, you have to prove, you don't even have a basis for your morality. I don't have to answer you unless you have a basis for your morality. Right? Now, what does that tell you about that person's intent in terms of being a good person, in terms of making the right choices? Oh, that lime crush is tasty. So it's perfectly obvious that, in fact, here's the other thing too, is I know everybody sort of is a little upset that these guys are kind of circling the wagons and saying, oh yeah, we're gonna, and I said, not many of them. There aren't many of them that do this. I mean, it seems to be true empiricism and Antonio that say this. But let's give those guys a little bit of credit for a moment, shall we? That they know G-Man is stupid, and they know that G-Man has no impulse control, and he goes off half-cocked all the time. Like, just put yourself in their shoes for a moment and imagine what it's like to be somebody who wants to be able to make a video and say, G-Man knows he has my full support, right? This is a phrase that true empiricism use. G-Man knows that he has my full support. True empiricism wants to be able to come forward and make a video where he can say that line. True empiricism wants it to be publicly known that G-Man has his full support. But in preparing himself to make that video, true empiricism has to listen to G-Man say stupid shit like what G-Man does. For relevant example, today, you hear G-Man accusing Annabelle and Hannah and Gus Belanger of engaging in a fraud, right? This whole thing about G-Man goes into a thing about how, well, Gus isn't really in the hospital. Well, they say Gus is in the hospital. I'm trying to find where the quote's here. What was the phrase he used? Gus supposedly got sick. And G-Man tells the story today that there was a fundraiser which everybody knew the fundraiser was to pay the hospital bill. And now G-Man has uncovered the great scam. It turns out that money wasn't for the hospital bill. Dun, dun, dun. And G-Man's the one who breaks the story. Nobody else detected this scam. But oh, thank goodness. You know, oh, and you know how Gus always says he's really skinny? Have you ever, you know how much Gus talks about how skinny he is? It turns out he's not skinny. He says, so G-Man says, well, Gus supposedly didn't need that, or Gus supposedly got sick, he says. And then another point it's about an 8 or 9 minute mark in this video we put up today. G-Man says, Gus needed some surgery for his laziness. It's actually what G-Man says. Gus needed surgery for his laziness. Fascinating. Like, so True Empiricism and Antonio, if they give half a shit about Gus's well-being, which there's a good argument to say that they don't, but let's pretend that they do. They know the actual story. They know that Gus isn't getting surgery for his laziness. They know that Gus is not at home sitting on the couch watching TV. Gus lives in an institution. This is well known by a large number of people. And to go out, if you came across some information that this weren't true, you would have a mighty, mighty high standard on yourself to really have a solidly justified position to claim that none of that stuff is true. You know, that G-Man's out, or that Gus is out there saying that, you know, he's actually a skinny guy, but in fact he's a really heavy-set guy, and then his surgery for his laziness. What the fuck? I mean, if there's laziness surgery, oh my God, I don't know what the hell the guy's talking about. But so True Empiricism has to listen to G-Man say stuff like that, and knowing that where Hannah lives, that's a felony in New York. And the case could be quite easily made that since she involved the help of other people that were across state lines and made use of a national communication system, including telephones and the internet, that she's actually guilty of a federal offense. So we have G-Man now expressly accusing Hannah of a federal offense. And True Empiricism has to listen to that. And then True Empiricism has to turn on his camera and he has to say, G-Man knows that he has my full support. Now that's just today's example, because when True Empiricism did that video 2 days ago, this was after True Empiricism listening to G-Man make similar comments about Gus, the same accusation. Remember that G-Man has called out Gus and Hannah and Annabelle for a fraudulent fundraiser before these calls to G-Man's workplace. Again, after the calls, and even again today, after G-Man allegedly lost his job. So, you know, let's keep in mind that the True Empiricism and Antonio know that G-Man has these significant deficits. They know that he's not a smart guy on the uptake, and they know that he's got impulse control of a 2.5-year-old, and he just goes off and he says these things. And I do think to some extent we need to respect that they're trying to be supportive of him. I think I used to be more supportive of that. I used to try to be an ear for G-Man, but he's just so malicious and hateful that I don't serve a useful role in that. So I respect that, hey, at least there is somebody out there who's trying to be helpful to him that way. But I just don't think they're really doing him any good. But well, let's okay, so let's go back to the job thing. I want to get to that. So I want to give you a quick summary of events here. Here's what's happened, just to get for people who haven't know what's going on. Let me get you caught up. So several years ago, there were some nerdy humans who figured out a way to interconnect computers with each other over great distances. So there are people who live in separate cities that are now able to send messages to each other pretty much real time. Then some more stuff happens. There's the World Wide Web comes up, and it gets to be very democratized. So even now non-nerdy people are communicating with each other all around the globe. And then there came 4chan, and there came Google Hangouts. And it sort of created a world where people who enter into Google Hangouts know better than to give out their personal information, because there's crazy fuckers out there. And by the way, I just noticed the live chat is just hopping. Thank goodness. Geez, you people are great for coming up and showing up and chatting with each other while you're listening to my nonsense. Actually, I do want to sort of interrupt myself to get to this point. So I do want to mention about Antonio, because I do want to put some focus on Antonio's response and True Empiricism's response. They each started out their video, to their credit, they each started out their video by saying, hey, look, this is for both sides. This isn't just me scolding the atheists, right? This is for both sides. And that's a good point. I think, as I've said many times, as I've said in conversations with each of those guys separately, repeatedly, I do think we need to have some standards. I do think we need to kind of remind ourselves that we need some fundamental respect. So I'm glad that they open with that. And true empiricism very quickly then goes to, oh, the guys on the other side. Oh, the guys on the other side of the fence, blah, 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 you know. And true empiricism is very quick to point out all these awful things that the people on the other side are doing. And I just want to remind you guys of something, that during the 6-year run of the Magic Sandwich Show, for people who'd followed it full course, there were actually 7 different panelists, right? So it depends when you start watching it. They're sort of like, there were like 4 chairs, right? And then there would be more people, as somebody was too busy, you'd have a fill-in person, and then somebody would leave the show, and then somebody else would come in, and in total there were 7 different people. Of those people, there were only 2 people who successfully, think on this now, if you want to know who actually was behind the Magic Sandwich Show. There were only 2 people. It was Concordance and Hogtie Champ were the only 2 people who did not have their full name and address and employer's name spread all over the internet, leaked in some fashion. And I had a close call. I'm lucky that the guy who figured out who I was a fellow on the show, panelist, a long timer there named Thunderfoot. Who actually contacted me to say, hey, buddy, I figured out who you are. And you need to not be stupid, because this happened to me, and these people did everything they could to make my life absolutely miserable. So I'd taken some care to change some things on my channel so that it wasn't clear who I was. But you do need to be that careful about it. So because the other 5 members of the show, all of them, like Concordance and I, are the only 2 who didn't get that weird meeting at work where somebody from the HR department called you in and said, hey, we got this weird email that we need to talk to you about. Thunderfoot, by the way, this had happened to him on 3 separate occasions. Once because of a Muslim, once because of a Christian, and once because of purportedly, I don't know the full story behind that one, but let's say a radical feminist. But I guess it's just, so from my side of it, as much as I participate in these discussions, I know you don't get my real name. You can be my friend. You don't get my real name. You know, I feel bad a moment ago I said my kid's name. I think most people know both my kids' names, but I do try to say it as little as possible so that the light viewers of the Hogtie Champ channel don't get that much information. But then you got dummies like Hannah, who apparently have given G-Man her social insurance number, social security number. Sorry, she's just looking in the I'm just glancing at the live chat. G-Man has repeatedly said that Hannah, G-Man has said repeatedly that you have given him your social security number. And under what circumstances would that happen? Like, is that how people on the East Coast greet each other? Is that like they're sniffing each other's butt and then you like give each other your SSN? I think my wife knows my social insurance number. She has to, because of the taxes. Oh, he's an idiot. That explains it. Okay, yeah, no, Hannah responds he's an idiot. He makes these ridiculous claims. G-Man says he has Dragnut's address and it was given to him by Dragnut's wife. Completely implausible story. I don't know, Hannah. Hannah asked why the fuck would I ever give that to him. I don't know. G-Man, who claims not to lie, says that on several times he said that you had at some point given it. He knows it. And oh, you don't even carry your card with you. Neither do I. Yeah, so he's a crazy person. All right, so let's get back. So we got 4chan, we got Google Hangouts, we got people. Basically, the more exposure you get on the internet, the greater risk you put yourself at. It's like Russian roulette, right? Except let's say it's not a 1 in 6 chance, it's a 1 in 10,000 chance. If you get 10,000 people who watch your stuff, there's going to be at least one in that group who gets upset about something you said, and they will do some crazy ass thing. Now, you know, the Magic Sandwich Show in the sort of the middle of its run was in multi-platform distribution on iTunes and everything else, and we were getting 6,000 views on the Sunday and the Monday, and in the first week of the run we got about 12,000 views, and that would vary from week to week. Obviously, some crazy stuff happened. You got more. Venom Fang X was on at a time before I was there, and I mean that one got just crazy viewed and repeatedly reviewed. But that means that if you go on, I talked about gun control, and I got just a slew of like crazy people all upset with me about that sort of thing. So the more that if you encounter 1,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people, it's Russian roulette. Eventually it's going to go off. There's going to be some crazy person who's going to try to find your information. When you've helped them and you've given them your information by announcing your first and last name, by showing the front of your house, by telling people the names of your degrees and which school you went to, by telling people, by showing people the front of the store that you currently work at. These are all things that are going to make the crazy, showed him your passport. He claimed, Hannah says, he claimed that I showed him my passport and that's how he got my social insurance number. So I keep saying so, you know what I mean? So a social security number. Let that sink in. You showed him your passport. Do you carry your passport? Do you need a passport to go through the tunnel? I don't know. I've never been to NYC, so I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, so yeah, you get the Russian roulette concept. I'm laboring that too much. You get that the more your face is on the internet, the more likely it is you're going to encounter some crazy person. Now, notice my characterization of this too, right? I think that when I say it's these crazy people, I'm not saying, oh, those Christians. Because obviously, for those of us on the Magic Sandwich Show, there was the concern that it was the religious nutters that were going to take after us, right? Now, there's always the concern that there was going to be like that misery type fan that was going to do something crazy. But I got to tell you, in general, that doesn't really happen. None of us were ever really that popular to get somebody who wanted to break our ankles because they loved us so much. It's more the people who disagree with you and want to take it out with you on in some weird way. Now, obviously, if you're an evangelical apologist and you're out there speaking out against gay people, I would definitely be concerned that if you spread out enough of your information, there's going to be some LGBT person or some LGBT, even if they're not LGBT themselves, like gay rights supporter, who's going to go crazy and do something to your workplace, right? If you're out there speaking out against LGBT, and I'm not saying LGBT people are like this, but I'm saying if you piss off 10,000 LGBT people, don't be surprised when one of them phones your workplace if you've given them that information, right? And if you're somebody who speaks out against Islam and there are 10,000 people, this you know, I should call up Sam Harris and see if he'll join my hangout here, and let's talk about what his inbox is like, because people know his real name. People know where that guy lives. People often know when he travels. You imagine what it's like being that guy. So for those of us that are like low level, oh, I've got 200 subscribers, you know, types of YouTube people, we start out smart, right? And don't give out that information. Now, G-Man, of course, did give out that information. Okay, so G-Man started a YouTube channel, gave out his real name quite often, and then later he started flipping out whenever people mentioned his real name. And then around this time, G-Man also broadcast his workplace in his video. So everybody knows his full name. Everybody knows where he works. There's no need to say it on my channel, right? Don't care. It's out there enough. Stop it, right? So I even take down hangouts when people mention his real name or say where he works or anything like that. Now, my understanding is that G-Man still works at that store. Now, there's some discussion today that his employment may have been terminated through one means or another. We'll discuss that in a moment. But just working from what we know up to yesterday, G-Man is still employed by the store. He does videos from the store. And there are a lot of people that are like, oh, you shouldn't be doing videos from the store. Look, that's none of our concern, right? I mean, as G-Man retells it, and this appears credible, he says that his boss has said it's fine if you do videos from the store as long as it doesn't interfere with the store. And that sort of makes some sense. And the fact is, when G-Man does it, there's sometimes other employees in the store. He's like, oh, I'm going to go do a video. So people know about this. It's what a lawyer might call notorious. It's out in the open, right? So G-Man does these videos. It's not like he's hiding from his boss. His boss knows it's going on. It's all cool. It's up to him. It's up to his boss. But notice that requirement doesn't interfere with the store. This is what G-Man's told him himself, that once the nonsense starts to interfere with the store, his boss is in a pretty good position to then change the circumstances, revoke that permission. And if it gets bad enough, his employer has every right to terminate G-Man's employment. He can do it one of two different ways. He can do it by saying, look, it's not working out. This is a poor fit. So we're going to let you go without cause, but with notice. So we're going to give you a week's worth of pay, pocket money, 2 weeks worth of pay, right? That's going to depend on how common law applies to a 43-year-old man working at an $8 an hour job in a major urban center, right? So when here In Canada, we call them the Bartle factors. The American lawyers will have to tell you about how all that works there. I'm sure New York even has a specific statute about when you fire somebody, terminate their employment without cause, with notice. There's a provision you have to give them a certain amount of pay, and oh, he gets paid under the table. Oh, well, then, well, whatever. I don't know. I'm not even going to repeat that. Okay, I'm not even going to repeat who said it in the live chat. Somebody says he gets paid under the table. I don't know if that's true or not. If it is true, I feel much less sorry for him. Oh, and actually, let's touch on that for a second. Oh my God, this is a meandering video. It might be the case that G-Man gets paid directly from his employer, and you need to remember something about American law. Some states permit this. So I have to compare it to what it's like here, because most countries do it this way. If you have employment, you have to give your okay, Dragnet. Yes, I said it all caps. Great. Don't ever be embarrassed of anything you do online, Drag. So here, if you're going to receive money as part of the course of employment, you have to register. You have to give them your social insurance number, and that employer has to take source deductions for employment insurance, for Canada Pension Plan, and for income taxes. And those are your withholdings. Those are called payroll withholdings. And in some cases, they're very, very low. In other cases, they're high. It depends on a whole bunch of different circumstances. But you have to register that employee and pay them by their social insurance number. There are many cases, by the way, where that withholding would be zero, right? When I say you have to take off that withholding, you have to take off the appropriate withholding. In so many cases, it's zero. Now, in the States, there's a system where you can have a bunch of laborers, and you can say, well, today I hired 15 people to come spread some gravel at this work site. And if I were to put them all on payroll, I would have to pay them each, I would have to offer them each $100, and I'd have to give them 85 and collect 15 as a tax withholding. But you know what? I didn't sign any of them up. So I'm going to change it to 10 workers because the math's easier. I took those 10 people. I was going to pay them $100 a day minus their $15 tax withholding. And what I did was I just gave everybody at the end of the day, I handed them $85 cash. And I kept the $150, which is the 10 times $15 tax withholding. And here you go, I'm submitting it to the government, right? So there are day laborer situations in the States where the employer is free to pay a person's taxes for them. Now that means that person isn't going to get, what's a T4? Help me out, Americans. What's a T4 slip? A T4, statements of earnings and deductions. What does your employer give you to tell you how much money they gave you over the course of a year? When you pay people into this arrangement, and if you get paid into this arrangement, you're not going to get that slip, whatever it's called, the American T4. W4. Oh, W4. Thank you. Well, that makes sense. So whatever. So when people say, I don't want people to spread this rumor that he's being paid illegally or paid under the table unless you have some good evidence for it, because now I'm getting W4S, W2, W2. Fuck off, all of you. Why are you doing this to me? You're not helping me not meander through this video. So I don't want people accusing G-Man of any sort of an illegal employment scam unless you have some actual evidence for it. For example, if, say, the state of New Jersey has a minimum wage that's higher than what G-Man claims to be being paid. Or it might be the case that he's being paid the $8.60, but the 60 cents is being held as a tax withholding. You don't know. Maybe when he says he's paid $8 an hour, maybe that's his net. You don't know. So stay out of it. That's his business, right? So see, that's where I draw the line. That's his business. That's up to him and his employer, right? So let's get back to our events here. So G-Man's been getting calls to work. I learned about this a little more than a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and we need to be clear too. It's a lot of calls. It's not just there was one day where people went goofy. There were a lot of calls. There's pizza being sent. Now I've already made comments about this. I don't think people should be doing that. I see we have a Gary Ridgway. And I guess this needs to be stated. So I understand, and I know with the live chat, people are going to explain it to me better. But so apparently there's a Gary Ridgway account, but there may be more than one Gary Ridgway account. There may be one person. There may be several people. I've heard from the evangelicals that they believe it's a whole team of people. But I've also heard from a couple of guys on our side. Specifically atheists, like Saka, for example, had mentioned that, oh no, he had some information. I don't know where he got it from. But he says, oh, there's like up to 12 guys in it, right? Like I don't know. So I don't know the story of it. I just know that the only contact I've had with the Gary Ridgway account has been in one of these little green bar hangout IM things, where the other day he'd asked, so what do you think about what I'm doing? I've never contacted him to tell him what I think about what he's doing. But when he asked me, I went, okay, you want me to tell you what I think you're doing? I think you're being a jerk. I think that's completely across the line. I think there's lots of things you do that are really cool. I think some of the documenting of some of the skeezy stuff that G-Man's been doing, I think that's fine. But then now you're calling the store and you're costing pizza delivery companies money. And I just wish you wouldn't do that. That's stupid. All right. So, I mean, I've been pretty clear about this. But let's go back to what True Empiricism and certainly G-Man, what they've been saying. They've been saying, and you need to go and listen to their videos when, like, how often they say they've been doing it. Now, in their view, it's a group of people who are doing it. And that group of people includes you and me. And I know that if you ever ask them, if they say, are you specifically accusing Hogtie of this? They're going to say, no. But then you listen to what they actually say. And this is the dishonesty in how they speak, right? Is that they say things like, oh, and I'm not blaming everyone. I'm not saying everyone on their side is doing it. But then in their next breath, they'll say, well, those people support it. Well, those people are doing it. I'm not supporting it. I haven't supported it. I've got nothing to do with it. To whatever extent I have any control over it, and it's nothing more than being able to give my opinion, I don't like it. And I say, please don't do it. I've even said that it is something that the police can investigate. Right? I mean, my understanding, you start calling people up, you're ordering pizzas, you're doing this stuff, there's got to be some kind of a law against it. There's a law against it here. And if somebody called the police and the police was able to figure out who it was, well, then the police should look into it and the police should decide to do what the police are going to do. And I wouldn't go, oh, that's too bad that somebody got some misdemeanor charge because he used the phone to call for a pizza for a guy in New Jersey. Oh, that's too bad because that guy in New Jersey really deserved it. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right at all. The guy's breaking the law. He's breaking the law. That's what the, oh God, I said breaking the law twice in a row there. And then that song gets in my head. It's got in everybody's head. So, that's fine. But that's not how they look at it. That's not how G-Man and True Empiricism and Antonio look at it. They look at it like we're all doing this. So you just listen to their videos, how often they say, well, they're doing this. These people are doing that. People on the other side of the conversation are doing this. Today, G-Man even claims to, this is a quotation, he says, to have video proof of who is doing it. So G-Man now has video proof of who's doing it. So you're ready for this now. That means now the true story is going to come out. We're now going to know who's doing this. But he's in that part of the video, he's specifically referring to the calls to his workplace, to the Batman voice and the pizza and the Chinese food. G-Man not only knows who's doing it, but he has video proof of who's doing it. Oh, except wait a second, right after he goes, oh, and that proof is on my channel. Wait a minute, G-Man, are you talking about that stupid video you did the other day where for 9 minutes you closed the store, physically just closed the store and told customers who were inside the store while the store was closed, you closed the store and then you talked to this guy on the phone for 9 minutes and you put that video up on the internet? Is that your video proof of who is doing it? Because that's not video proof of who's doing it. That's video proof of G-Man being an idiot and not realizing that when someone crank calls you at work, click, you don't even slam the phone down. Click, you just set it back in its cradle. End of phone call. But no, what does G-Man do? He closes the store. I'm told, although I don't know how this is inferred from the video, that when he closed the door, he actually locked it. And then you hear him say to a customer, he goes, no, we're closed. Closed. And then he's blah, 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 blah. And then a few minutes later, you hear a kid asking questions about the blue barrels, which I admit is funny because we've all done that. We're like, what's with these blue barrels, right? Well, here's a little kid. Hey, mister, what's with these blue barrels? And this kid's like, who are you with? And why is this kid inside of a store that G-Man just locked the door to? And then what happens? Nothing, because G-Man, so there's apparently an unattended child in the store that G-Man asks him, oh, so are you with somebody? Now, either the kid is an unattended child in the store that G-Man has now locked in the store and then does nothing about it to reunite this kid with his parents or get him out of the store. You got this kid wandering around your store. Or alternatively, the kid was with a responsible grown-up who's also locked in the store and not getting any service because G-Man's, we're closed. So G-Man now says he has video proof of who is doing it. He doesn't have video proof of who is doing it. He has a recording of a call in which G-Man is a total idiot. And he does things that unquestionably are things you can be fired for on first offense, right? His employer might give him a warning for it and say, well, look, you got to sort of tighten up your attitude about the job. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is I think we all need to be really, really clear with Antonio and true empiricism. You can try to be clear with G-Man. It's not going to make any difference. Their bullshit version of the story that, oh, atheists are trying to get him fired. Well, let's start with there. Number one, atheists are trying to get him fired. Not true. Clearly, there is at least one person who I would concede is probably an atheist. I certainly don't think he's an evangelical young earther or flat earther. I think he's an atheist who has been making repeated phone calls to it. Now, it might be 2 people, it might be 3 people, it might be 12 people. I don't know. People are telling me this. I don't know how they come to that conclusion. But you know which people it's not? It's not me people. It's not Fiona people. It's not Dragnet, right? Dragnet gets specifically accused of this. Sock account. Oh, let's pause there for a second. I know we're at number 1 here, but let's pause in here for a second. G-Man explicitly accused Sock account. Sock, for people who don't know, Sock account. He's a gainfully employed member of the Canadian Forces, living on the west coast of Canada. Super nice guy. Anybody who's been in a hangout with him or seen him in a hangout, he's smart. He's thoughtful in both senses of the word thoughtful. And yeah, he likes to bust G-Man's chops. He likes to show G-Man. And he just told G-Man recently, he says, it's because you're stupid. Right? Oh, Dragnet's also live. If you find me boring, switch over to, oh no, he's not live. He's saying I'm live and also I'm somehow calling him. I don't know. He's talking about, I don't know what Greg's talking about. G-Man. Oh, I know what you're talking about, Drag. You're saying that at one point, G-Man accuses Dragnet of being the person who's calling in while Dragnet was actually otherwise occupied being live. But just think on that. You see what Sock account does. Sock account has these interesting conversations with people, and once in a while he'll just come out and say, "You're stupid," and that's what he said to G-Man recently. But then Sock account, for some reason, his brain snaps and he's like, I'm gonna phone the store and I'm gonna put on this Batman voice. And like, how is it a reasonable conclusion in G-Man's mind that it was Sock account? So he accuses Dragnet. He accuses Sock account. I forgot there was somebody else in there he accused that just really, I just went, huh? It was in my post the other day that when I listed the 3 people that G-Man had said it was this person. You know, he's just spinning his wheels all over the place. But anyway, so yeah, he gets this call with the Batman voice, and G-Man takes it, and he's just acting like a total goof. He says it could be Sock account, but I'll tell you who it's not. It's not me. It's not Sock account. It's not Dragnet. These are all people who said, don't do this. And different. I'm sorry. Okay, I've been corrected in the live chat. Everyone, hold your thought for a second here. I need to correct this. The person identifying as Gary Ridgway in the live chat says it's not Batman, it's Satan. Oh, he said it was Brucifer. Okay, Isabella says that apparently G-Man says it was Brucifer. And apparently it's not a Batman voice. That's a Satan voice? Huh. Wow, I've misjudged this situation terribly. Oh my goodness. Let's be super clear with these guys about what they're saying that's not true. When they say the atheists are trying to get G-Man fired, there appear to be a small group of people, I would concede they're probably atheists, that are doing these offline trolling things that most of us are out there saying some version of, you shouldn't be doing that. You really shouldn't do that. Some people are saying, well, you know, if you're going to do it, at least do it to a jerk. You know, people are saying stuff like that, you know. But there's at least some people speaking out against it. I don't know many people who are saying, yes, this is a good idea. I don't know. You're just not getting the support. But then you have G-Man, who says, for many months now, he's been saying that Gus and Hannah and Annabelle are engaged in a fraud. You know, help me out with this. I don't have enough notes on this part, so help me out, live chat. Just off the top of your head, list don't just say bullshit. List specific lies that G-Man has said of other people, where he is, for example, accusing them of a crime. The one today kind of pissed me off when knowing the nature of Gus's illness, and also having been employed in that part of the province in healthcare, knowing the specific facility that he had been in for a time. It's upsetting to hear G-Man just say, but this is what G-Man does, right? He just looks for some way to hurt people's feelings, right? The whole thing of Jade's burning in hell, Jade's burning in hell. That was G-Man's brain just going, I need to hurt somebody. I'm so angry. He's got to lash out. He's got to lash out at somebody, right? So he just tried to think of, okay, what can I say that's just really going to hurt people? Oh, that Mark Unuya, or whatever you pronounce his name, is in my live chat. Well, I want to say something to hurt him. Well, there's really nothing I can say to get under Mark's skin. Oh, I can call that Annabelle a slut. Like, what the fuck is that? Where G-Man now says, well, I know Mark is, kind of likes Annabelle, and he's probably a little protective of her, and I bet it would really upset him and really just make his blood boil if I call Annabelle a slut. So he starts slut-shaming Annabelle. When's the last time Annabelle had any contact with G-Man? What has she ever done to hurt G-Man? Mark Anura? Yeah, Mark Anura. So he starts slut-shaming Annabelle. And this is why I wanted to prove the point at the top of the thing here too, where I was saying about things that G-Man does that my kids see, and it really, he's a cautionary tale for them. It's just when G-Man does something, you don't want to do that. And I literally could not even tell my children, like when G-Man starts going on about the, Annabelle's slut and these things, like, I couldn't even explain that to a child, because it's so disgusting. And he looks for, oh, well, you know what, Hogtie, you're in no position to criticize because you can't articulate your morality. I actually do have a basis for my morality. I can articulate it. I have articulated it for G-Man's benefit on several occasions, only to have G-Man say you don't have a basis for your morality. When you hear G-Man say, well, Hogtie doesn't have a basis for his morality, what you need to hear G-Man saying is, I'm too stupid to understand Hogtie explaining benefits and harms. Whatever. So how did our list go here? I mean, there's this is a long old one. What's her name? Fiona and Alex Botten having an affair. He's accused me of being a racist 3 times. One time he went on to sort of explain that that's not really what he meant, but he did it in a very angry way and accused me of lying. He accused me of lying when I said that he called me a racist. And then he played a tape of himself calling me a racist, and then he went on to explain how that actually meant something else. So he said I was lying, and then he played exactly the thing that showed that I wasn't lying, and then he, without apology, but the other 2 times he never apologized for. So 3 times he's called me a racist. 1 time it's questionable whether he really meant it. The other 2 times he has repeatedly called me a dock dropper, when in fact I've taken steps to stop people from dock dropping when I can. He's accused me of sniping hangouts, never done, not once. Yeah, and accused Hannah of committing crimes. He's stealing the phone. Oh, do we leave this one off the list? He's accused several people of stealing the phone. He's quite sure that Dragnet, one day it's Dragnet, another day it's Hannah, another day it's Redline, Red's Rhetoric. He's accused all these people of these things. You say, well, Hogtie, you don't have a basis for your morality, which again means he's stupid or unwilling to understand it. So I don't have a reason to criticize him. Now, surely True Empiricism and Antonio Fletcher must, like, those guys are smart enough to know that when G-Man says, oh, you don't have a basis for your morality, so therefore you can't criticize me, that's G-Man rolling over and showing his belly. G-Man knows he fucked up, and his 2 friends knows he fucked up. And he just simply can't ever admit that he made a mistake. So in the face of all this stuff, right, in the face of G-Man doing these things, including, the phone calls to people and the false accusation that we're all out there trying to get his job fired, trying to get him fired from his job, the false accusation that we were all putting, what we kept saying, we were contacting the Better Business Bureau, never happened. Complete bullshit story. I did a whole hangout on it where we went through the actual evidence. There were 2 people who had put Google reviews, and they both changed them after, right? And one of them apologized. But the idea that we were in this big conspiracy to put Better Business Review complaints and have his boss have to deal with all this stuff. Oh my God, it was just bullshit. It was a complete lie on G-Man's part. Those guys ate it up hook, line, and sinker. So today's story is that atheists are trying to get G-Man fired by calling his work. No, none of us are trying to get him fired. Certainly there are some people who are calling his work, maybe in an effort to get him fired. I'm sure that some people will celebrate if G-Man gets fired. But let's get on to number 2. The other thing that these guys are going to say that we need to make very, very clear with them and point out to them that they simply cannot be that dumb to believe this to be the case, is when the story comes out, well, atheists got G-Man fired. Atheists got G-Man fired by calling his workplace. That needs to be shut down super quickly. G-Man will believe that. There's no change in that. But the other 2 guys might just be smart enough to know that that's bullshit. Here's one way to look at it. And I actually had written to True Empiricism, receiving no response from him, to say, look, you've told us before that you've supervised people before. I don't know if you've been involved in hiring and firing decisions, but you know what? Let's all do this right now. 100 people watching. Let's all pretend we're an employer somewhere. We're a supervisor who has the authority to recommend hirings and firings. And you have an employee who's pretty good. He's yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Stuff gets done when this guy's in the store. And then he's doing a couple of videos here and there, and he's like, oh, I hope you don't mind if I do videos. And you tell him, yeah, it's okay if you do some videos, as long as it doesn't interfere with the store. But then you find out that the reason the calls are coming to the store is because he takes his camera outside and he shows the workplace. And he's drawing attention on the internet, drawing attention to your store on the internet. So then you sit him down and you're like, hey, you know what? Maybe you got to dial that down a little bit. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that stuff. And then it comes to, well, now we're getting these crank phone calls at work. We're getting pizzas delivered to work. Everybody's upset because all this stuff's going on. And then you have that day when he takes one of these crank phone calls and he makes a 9-minute video. He goes and he locks the door of the store. He tells customers, we're closed, we're closed. And there's still people in the store. There's a child in the store. At one point, he's picking up a gun, not in this particular 9 minutes, but a different video. He's picking out a gun. He's walking out the front of the store. Now, my understanding is that that particular gun is not a firearm, so it would be unregulated where he lives. But this is also in an urban area on the west coast of the United States. Those people are super skittish about people walking out the streets with anything that looks like a gun. It's just dumb things like this. It put yourself in the position of you're his employer, and this guy, you know, walks in and out of the store with a BB gun, and he's closing the store and he's getting customers in. He's telling people they're closed. All these phone calls are coming in. You've previously talked to him about putting that limit on there. Sorry, I just noticed in the live chat. So Drew's joined us. I'm going to respond to his one not totally fucking stupid point. The others I'll ignore because it's fucking stupid. But I honestly want you to do this. In fact, if Drew's here, you mentioned, I just mentioned I'd written this the other day. He didn't see fit to respond to it. But put yourself in that position. You're his employer. You previously talked to him about this stuff not interfering with the stuff in the how things go on in the store. But in spite of that, he ties up the phone for 9 minutes. He gets all pissy about it. He locks people in the store. He's shouting at the speaker phone. He just makes your store look like a crazy place. So then you go talk to him and you use this phrase as your, did I say West Coast? Chaos Theory, tell me I didn't say West Coast. I'll have to take this video down. I've embarrassed myself. Surely I know it's the East Coast. And you use this phrase when you talk to this employee of yours. You say, this is now costing the store money. How do you interpret that? Right? And in my view, if you tell that employee this is now costing the store money, you've now put that employee on notice. You have 0 more chances. If this happens again, your employment here will be terminated with cause, without notice. Now, maybe his employer is a decent enough person, and I've done this too. When you've had an employee that's just like, look, it's just not working out. We have cause to fire you, but we're going to pay you a week. We're going to put 2 weeks worth of pay or something in your pocket. You're leaving today. You don't come back to work tomorrow. Your stuff's in a box. but you can pick up a check on your way out, because that also prevents that employee from suing you for wrongful termination, wrongful dismissal. So I've done that before. But I can tell you right now, if I were G-Man's employer and this stuff was going on, I would fire G-Man for G-Man's actions. Now I do see, let's just take a look in here. So you people are all evil. Okay, good one. If that, oh, sorry, let me just check, because is true empiricism that much of an idiot? Answer, drum roll. Yes, he is. It is true empiricism. Yes, calling us evil. Blah, 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 we're evil. Okay, true empiricism. La, la, la. Laughing and entertained by causing someone his job. Sorry, I said there was one point he made that wasn't totally fucking stupid, and that was mistaken. That was totally stupid. First off, let's call that a typo. Let's say he's saying laughing and entertained by causing someone to lose his job. Let's say that's what he actually meant by that. Nope, sorry, didn't cause him to lose his job. I want you to go back and read that post. True empiricism. Go back and read that post. I'll send you the link to it again, and I want you to read that post. And I want you to read the part where it says, if G-Man loses his job over this, it is 0% my fault. It is 0% the fault of any of us here on the internet. And it is 100% G-Man's fault. Because G-Man's employer obviously puts up with a lot of stuff. G-Man's employer lets him do videos from the store. G-Man's employer isn't disrupted by the phone calls, right? This has been going on for a long time. If there's a workplace where somebody comes up and says, oh yeah, some people are calling this place now, but all you do, the phone rings, G-Man, you're click, and you hang up the phone, and that happens 20 times over the course of a week, that would be the end of it. That store would still be doing their regular business. It wouldn't cost them a penny. The boss might notice it because they take some of these calls and they just hang up, and that's it. The caller stops calling. For God's sake, I remember when we were kids, and we didn't have our own phone. We had Party Line, for God's sake. Just hang on to this, true empiricism. Get this. When we had Party Line, we also got a phone book. And at the front of the phone book, it said how to deal with nuisance phone calls. And it was hang up. Don't get angry. Don't shout. Don't flip out. Don't slam the receiver down. Click. You just hang up. And the calls stop. If they don't, you go to the police and you let them deal with it. Now we have really cool things like the ability to block numbers. So even if somebody had been calling the store 20 times over the course of a week, that would have been very easily dealt with from a business viewpoint. If you've ever been in a business, true empiricism, you claim that you've supervised people. If you've ever been in a workplace where there's a phone and some nonsense is happening on the phone, click, you hang up the phone. The phone's there to deal with customers. A customer calls, you talk to the customer, somebody else calls and they're there to, I'm Batman or Satan or whatever the guy was doing. Click, you hang up the phone and it's done. The whole thing is done. But so that workplace is not at all disrupted by these phone calls. What is disrupting at that workplace? And again, I want you to think about what G-Man is like at work. The phone rings, he takes the call, he goes, hang on a second. He goes, he locks the store, he doesn't shoo the customer, he just go away. He shoos them, he doesn't send them out of the store. He just have them ambling around the store and he's not serving them. And he's like, we're closed. Somebody asks him a question, we're closed, get away, where's your mom? Go away. And then can you imagine what G-Man was like the rest of that day at work? You know what G-Man's like. You see that look in his face where he's just all pissy and he's all upset. And that's what he would have been like the rest of the day at work. I promise you, if G-Man had been my employee, he would not have been at work the next day. He either would have been suspended for a couple of days or he would have been outright fired. So this is the thing I want to be super duper clear with you, true empiricism. I want to explain in a second why I thought you were almost making a marginally intelligent point. Your point was we are laughing and entertained by us causing G-Man to lose his job. And that's bullshit. And you've got to be halfway to smart enough to know that that's bullshit. Now, if you had said, initially I thought you said that we're laughing and being entertained by G-Man's pain. And that's something I'll admit I struggle with. Because there's actually a moment you hear me laugh. JD Kane had said something about the big red button, and I unmuted the chuckle, you know, because G-Man was going full G-Man. We can't even say full G-Man anymore. It used to be that there was sort of like 90% G-Man, 95% G-Man, full G-Man, and now that scale has to be logarithmic, because wherever full G-Man used to be, he idles at full G-Man now. So it's got to be logarithmic. Like there's got to be some weird Richter scale version of how crazy of a jerk G-Man is. He was going way off. He was like 10 times normal full G-Man. And we find that funny. And there are parts of me that think, well, I do think that's funny because G-Man's a jerk. G-Man is a dishonest person who is hateful to people, and he intentionally. What I find funny, here, let me try this. Let me explain this to you why I find that stuff funny. I find it funny if you go on YouTube and you do a search for instant karma. Look for those instant karma videos. So it's like somebody who comes up to punch somebody else in the back of the head, not even in the front. But then right when he goes to stroke that guy in the back of the head, he slips and lands on his own back. That stuff I find funny, right? I don't always find it funny. Oh, some guy's riding his bike and he falls off. That I don't find funny. But when you see somebody who's doing something like, oh, I'm going to prank this person, or I'm going to do something mean to this person. Like there's some videos on there where somebody's in their car and they do something to cut somebody off, but then they themselves, the one who did the bad thing in traffic, jumps out of their car and starts yelling, "What the?" And while they do that, they'd hopped out of their car and head and put it in park, and their car rolls away from them and smashes into a pole. I find that shit hilarious. And what G-Man is doing right now is G-Man causing a problem and then jumping out of his car to shake his fist at everybody else for causing that problem and letting his car roll away from him into a pole. That's an analogy because, as we all know, G-Man doesn't have a driver's license, which also is arguably funny. So, you know, I thought True Empiricism was asking, I know he's not posting now. If he wants to come in and talk about it, he certainly can. I don't know why he'd bother. I welcome him to if he wants to. He's you know, still a guy I don't mind talking with. But let's get back to where we're drawing the line. Actually, let me get to that in a second. And then, but there are times when I think, well, do we laugh too hard? Are we getting joy from someone else's misery? And I'll tell you honestly, if I find out G-Man had gotten fired today or at any time, I want you to know I'm going to have some mixed feelings about it. I don't find it funny. If G-Man lost his job, I would feel bad about it. And to any extent where I did say, well, that's kind of funny that happened to him because he kind of shot himself in the foot, I would feel guilty for being amused by it even a little bit. But I don't think this is a good thing. I think G-Man finally has some stability in his life. He has a job that he gets up, he goes to, he does his thing. He appears to do well with the customers, and he's got a boss that puts up with his stuff. G-Man's life is going smoothly in that regard. Sure, he's still living in his sister's attic, but whatever. You know, G-Man's got a place. He's doing his thing. That's good. I don't want to see. Yes, Tyler, I'd heard about that. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to see things go badly for G-Man. I don't want to see G-Man's life turned upside down. But notice as I'm listing this, when I say that I would have some mixed feelings about it, they're not really good feelings. They're just, I would feel bad if G-Man lost his job. I'd feel, no, that's shitty. I wish that wouldn't happen to him. But notice nowhere in there is any sort of feelings of guilt, like I really shouldn't have done that thing that cost G-Man his job. Because listen up, True Empiricism, listen up, listen up. It isn't my fault. I have done absolutely nothing to interfere with G-Man's job, to do anything hurtful. If anything, any contact I've had with G-Man since he's had this job has been to do things that have been helpful to him. So for example, heck, let's just go straight to this. Let's go back to the Gus thing. I want to focus on this Gus thing a little bit. This is why when something bad happens to G-Man and he brings it on himself, people are entertained and amused by it. So we discussed earlier, sort of a new chapter in the Hangout here. Then we'll get back to the where the draw the line thing. G-Man comes out. He's been saying this for months. Today, he put a really fine point on it that Gus needed some surgery for his laziness. Gus supposedly got sick, and Gus didn't need that for a hospital bill. So let's talk for a second about the expenses of dealing with a healthcare problem. And I'm going to talk specifically about not about the conditions themselves, but I'm talking about these two events. Gus had been in the hospital, and he's in a hospital-like facility now, and G-Man had been in the hospital recently. Okay, G-Man's in a place where you can be sent a bill from the hospital. Gus, as I heard Drag marginally successfully explaining today, Gus lives in a place where there's a there's an insurance plan that applies to all people in the province when you pay into this insurance plan, and there's a list of things for which you are not allowed to pay for. It's called a single payer system. Okay, so when Gus's life goes off the rails because he needs to be in a hospital and he needs to receive care in the hospital and surgeries and medicines and all these other things, and meanwhile there's nobody paying his gas bill at his house to keep the heat on, right? You know, these things are going on. Also, he's being prescribed medications. Once he leaves the hospital, he has to go buy his own medications. Some of those things can be paid for only by the province. So it's OHIP. OHIP is a provincial insurance program that when Gus is staying at the hospital, they can't charge him for the bed. Right? There are some extras they can charge him for. So if you go and you say, oh, well, I want a private room, then they can throw $100 a night on extra that you have to pay. But they can't charge you for the food. They can't charge you for the bed. They can't charge you for the surgery. All those charges have to be charged to the provincial insurance program. And so the hospital will not send Gus Belanger out with a bill from the hospital. Now, here's the thing. Everybody fucking knows this. Everybody knows this, that's how that works. At the time that the fundraiser was going on, it was well explained to people that he was in the hospital, and thank goodness it's a Canadian hospital, and he's been paying into the OHIP program because thank goodness he's over. By this point, he's over the $100,000 mark easily. It would be devastating for Gus to have to pay those hospital bills. But he, for his life, has been paying into OHIP. I guess briefly it was another province he was paying into, but let's not get into that. He's been paying into those programs. So now they pay those fees. But that doesn't mean that they go and they make sure that his utilities are paid, his gas bills paid, that I don't know what other expenses he had. But so everybody was really clear. Everybody was really clear when this fundraiser happened that Gus was very sick. It's a long period of institutionalization he's going to be in. And he is, thank goodness it's happening in a place where at least the hospital bills are paid, but he's out of work. He's going to need some help. So let's set up a GoFundMe, and people can donate to this. We'll do some fundraiser things, and people can do this to make sure that Gus has a bit of pocket money to make sure that those other bills are paid, right? That's explicitly what it was from the beginning. G-Man now turns it around today, and he says that he had been told that this was to pay Gus's hospital bills, which reveals nothing more than the combination of stupidity and dishonesty that is the package that we call G-Man. Because if G-Man thought that we were raising money to pay hospital bills for somebody who lives in a province that has a single payer system, where it would not be legal to pay the hospital, then G-Man's a fucking idiot. But more so, he's dishonest because he misunderstood or whatever he thinks is going on. And he's now spreading the story that Hannah told him. And I think more to the point, it was some stuff Annabelle was saying at the time, although he doesn't mention Annabelle's name today for some reason, told him that, oh, we're doing this to pay his hospital bills. That's bullshit. That is not at all what was said at the time. Nobody ever told G-Man that it was for his hospital bills. It was to raise money to support this guy when he was going through this long-term crippling crisis. Painful, crippling crisis. Okay, hold that thought. So I haven't said anything about this publicly, but G-Man experienced some profound back pain a couple months ago. I will say that there is no excuse to say G-Man didn't suffer that back pain. From the description I'd heard from G-Man, from what I had from both secondhand and third-hand and first-hand accounts of people I've spoken with who talked with people who had been with G-Man, not on the internet, but with G-Man, while some of the stuff was going on, it is perfectly clear that G-Man did indeed suffer extreme back pain. When it later comes to light what the actual condition is, and I feel for the guy, because knowing the pain that is produced by the condition that G-Man actually had, it is actually worse in the time that it's going on. The pain is actually worse than a spinal fracture. And I'm telling you that, by the way, as somebody like I've had 2 spinal fractures, and it's very, very painful. If you don't want it. Live your life so that you don't break your spine. Don't take any advice out of this hangout. Don't break your spine. Ribs are bad. Don't break your ribs. It's actually worse. use those things to breathe, you know. On one occasion, I also had a kidney stone. It was in transit from the kidney to the urinary bladder. And I begged when I got to the hospital. The thing is, that's a very frightening experience for people. You got to remember, I knew what it was. First, I had first misidentified it, but about 2 hours into it, I went, oh no, it's this. Why did I not go to the hospital earlier? I got to the hospital, there was a little bit of a delay, and I begged. I went to the triage people, and I said, look, you know what this is. You know, I know what this is. Just give me the thing. Just give me the thing. And I was begging with them. And they followed the protocols, and they waited until I finally got to see a physician to sign off on it. And terrible. Avoid the kidney stones. Terrible experience. Now, the condition that G-Man actually had would have actually been more painful than a kidney stone. So I completely identify with him. I'm just like, man, I would not want to have been G-Man that day. But then you notice what the story becomes very quickly. True Empiricism arranges a fundraiser for G-Man using the phrase, and I wrote it down because he says, True Empiricism says, True Empiricism defends his effort to collect money for G-Man. True Empiricism tells us, this is a quotation, G-Man injured his back severely. True Empiricism tells us that G-Man injured his back severely. And hey, that video that G-Man did yesterday, how did he get from point A to point B? Did that guy ride a bike? Did you see him ride a bike? Have you noticed him riding a bike a lot lately? Have you noticed that G-Man was in terrible pain for some time? I got to wrap this up here pretty quick. He was in terrible pain for some time. And then he took antispasmodics. He says muscle relaxers. He would have taken a combination of smooth muscle antispasmodics and striated muscle antispasmodics. And then his back doesn't hurt anymore. Oh, and antibiotics. So an infection gets cleared up. Then he stops taking these medications, and everything's fine. Now, he was taking the medications for a little while afterwards, but whatever. So now G-Man had told people at one point, in his first video, he said that they were checking him for a slip disc. Later, he told people, including Hannah and other people, that he had a slip disc. And yet, he's fine. He's out riding a bike. Really. So we have a fundraiser. Now, by the way, I don't begrudge having a fundraiser for G-Man. If you like him, you support him, go ahead and send some money. If you think giving him a few bucks is great, that's great. That's fine if you want to do that. But let's be super duper clear that G-Man is saying that this other guy engaged. Just give me 1 second. I have to. Oh, 1 sec. Just 1 sec. So he said that here's Gus, who's engaged in a fraud. Hannah's engaged in a fraud. Annabelle's engaged in a fraud. And G-Man constructs all the details around this fraud, and including him lying about what the condition was, including lying about where the money was supposed to go. And yet when you look at the actual thing, how it was set up, it was a GoFundMe campaign. GoFundMe campaigns allow tracking, like there's actual accounting of the donations and the draws from the GoFundMe campaign. There's public disclosures of totals. You don't always get specifically who donated how much, but there's public disclosures of the totals. And as I say, the donations and the draws are all accounted for. True Empiricism announces he's setting up a GoFundMe for G-Man, which turns out to be a PayPal account. So PayPal is, oh, here's some money for you. And only the recipient of the funds has any accounting of what those donations are. And you know what? That's fine. I'll tell you what, if anybody at Jungle Jargon's here, if somebody put up a thing that said, hey, everybody, here's Jungle Jargon's PayPal, why don't you send them some money? And then some people sent him some amount of money. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't know why people would want to do that. I mean, I guess Jungle Jargon's an okay guy, but I don't know why they would do, but whatever. If they made up a story, if it was a lie, if the reason people were donating was predicated upon misinformation they were given, and he was taking part in a lie, then I would say that's fraud, and that's not cool. And so So I don't really have an objection with people sending money to G-Man if they want to send him money. But the guy who collects money under those circumstances, where he has lied about what his medical condition was, he's lied about what his expenses are, as he lives with a sister, and then he makes a video where he accuses Gus Belanger of lying about his medical condition and setting up a scam fundraiser. How do you tolerate this person? Like, how do you even put up with him, let alone make a video where you say, G-Man has my complete support, right? I 100% support everything. So I want to kind of wrap up what I'm saying and let you guys go on with your lives. But basically, I'm saying that this is kind of a response to the whole draw the line thing. Okay, so there's a spate of people phoning G-Man's workplace. It's not cool. Everybody speaks out against it. It shouldn't be happening. And yet what we hear in response is Antonio and G-Man and True Empiricism say, oh, Hogtie, oh, Dragnut, oh, Hannah, oh, sock account. You people shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't be doing what? Speaking out against it? Because that's what we're doing, you idiots. And then this is all going on in the context of literally months of really heinous, offensive, false accusations from G-Man that goes completely unaddressed by True Empiricism or by Antonio. Now, notice that True Empiricism and Antonio will say, oh, these guys think that we're not talking to G-Man in private. You're talking to G-Man in private? Okay, big deal. I don't give a fuck. He doesn't listen to you when you're employing Matthew 18, you think. You fucked up Matthew 18 again. Matthew 18 says that when someone commits an offense against you, you don't make it a big public drama. You interpret that incorrectly to mean when somebody makes a mistake that you don't like, you're not allowed to talk about it in public. But only if that person's a brother. If you don't see that person as a brother, then you absolutely should put them on blast, about everything else. And that's not true. Turn on your moral judgment, the way you handle a situation. If anyone causes you offense, if I do something, True Empiricism, Antonio, if I do something that you don't like, approach me in more drama. But no, you think it applies only to your brothers. It doesn't apply to other people because you have no reasoning, no freaking moral reasoning, right? But and then you use it as an excuse. Oh, well, when G-Man makes these public statements about how Gus Belanger and Hannah and Annabelle are engaged in a fraud, you're going to tell us, well, maybe we talked to G-Man about this behind the scenes. You don't know that. Well, maybe you did, but if you did, it doesn't fucking work, right? You're doing nothing. You're doing nothing about it except encouraging him. You're watching him doing it. You're turning on your camera and you're saying, G-Man has my full support. That's what you're doing. Now, I know that's not true. I know you guys do, like I think Antonio did a bit of a better job saying, well, G-Man says a lot of stuff. I don't really like when he says it. And I get that. I get where Antonio's coming from. Antonio did a much better job at points in his video saying, I think things in the conversation need to change on both sides. And I agree with that. But let me semi-abruptly bring this to a close by making this point, okay? The thing that kind of made me, I listened to Antonio's video again, and I kind of thought, yeah, I kind of want to make this point. At the 9 minute and 10 second mark in Antonio's video, he says, until this stops, the conversations will stop. That was in his first video. When G-Man came out and said, well, boycott, boycott. And True Empiricism came out with his line in the sand video. Antonio Fletcher comes out and says, until this stops. By the way, I'm bringing this, I'm tying a bow around the whole thing here. Now you guys will see what this whole hangout was about. Antonio says, until this stops, the conversations stop. That's Antonio putting his foot down. This is Antonio saying, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. But here's my question, Antonio. What conversations do you think you're stopping? What exactly are you putting the brakes on? When's the last time any of us have been in one of your hangouts? When's the last time you've come into one of my hangouts, even when I invite you? Right? You're not part of these conversations, and True Empiricism even less so. We talk more about True Empiricism than we talk to him. In the last couple of years, like I went into a True Empiricism hangout once. I waited until after G-Man left because G-Man's a fucking idiot and he just ruins every conversation. I had a great conversation with Veckel, and then I embarrassed True Empiricism, so he deleted the Hangout. That's the extent of contact I've had with any of you guys. I'm always happy to have you come into my rooms. G-Man, no. G-Man comes going, whoa, 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 boom, he's gone. G-Man doesn't get to the third whoa when he goes, whoa, 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 whoa. I kick him out. I don't go to G-Man. I once in a while, but once every 2 or 3 months, I'll put some comments in a live chat, or I'll post somewhere about how I find it funny that G-Man won't let me into his room, or how I find it funny that G-Man's running away from me. But if you notice, I never actually ask for the link. I never say, oh, come on, G-Man, send me the link, because I don't go into his rooms. What the fuck is the point of that? So you guys saying, we're drawing a line in the sand. You know, again, so I want to get Antonio's line here. Until this stops, the conversations will stop. Well, first, when he says until this stops, the this he's referring to is the fact that the internet exists in a way so that when some moron shows the front of the store of his place of employment to 10,000 people repeatedly over months at a time, eventually somebody's going to start phoning that store. That's the this that Antonio's complaining about. So until this stops, we're not going to be in conversations anymore. Well, I'm sorry, I can't erase 4chan. I can't change the nature of the internet. Dragnut is not in charge in how collective humanity thinks and the fact that people do stuff like this. You know, if you want this to change, because I tell you right now, if I now announce my phone, if I make a hang up after this hangout and I do another video and I say, hey, people, here's my phone number, and I put it up, somebody's going to start calling me, right? That's why you don't do stuff like that, okay? So Antonio says, until this stops. Well, I'm sorry, it's the nature of the internet. If you put your store on the news, on your channel, somebody's going to call your store. Sorry, Antonio, that's how that goes. G-Man's going to be more protective on his next job. Even he is that smart. Correct me in the live chat if you disagree. Until this stops, the conversations will stop. What conversations are you talking about, Antonio? True Empiricism runs this series of shows, which block them evolution. It's part 35. He doesn't let people in the room who do anything to ever embarrass him. He won't come into other rooms. He one time came in a TST and then made a video afterwards where he misrepresented what happened on the show. There is no olive branch coming from your side. I'm not extending an olive branch to you guys. My door's just open. It always has been. So you're not part of any conversations. So you saying until this stops, the conversations will stop, is you being a child saying, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Well, you know what, Antonio? Look down at your hands and I'll look around you. You don't have a ball. You never had a ball. And you've already been home for the last 2 years sitting on Mima's plastic-covered couch. So the conversations are going to keep going on, right? It's just we're going to keep talking about some basic rules about not calling people's work and whatever else. You can join in or not. I'd like to thank the, oh my goodness, 100 and some people off and on for showing up to watch the fireside chat today. You're very sweet and thoughtful people. I'd love to hear responses. Well, I'll talk later. Bye.